Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're doing something really exciting. We're taking this massive bank of 39 incredibly dense academic essay answers from an English literature course, and we're kind of flipping it on its head. We aren't just doing exam prep here. No, we are diving into an absolute masterclass on the human experience. From the quiet, hidden tragedies of everyday life all the way up to the macro-level dangers of political tyranny, these classic texts literally act like a mirror, reflecting our own modern world right back at us.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start off with a crash course in literature. Then we'll move into prose and philosophy, look at irony and tragedy through some short stories, dive into tyranny and youth with a couple of foundational novels, and wrap it all up with our final takeaway.
All right, Section 1, a crash course in literature. Let's just dive right into this.
So you might be wondering, how exactly do you take dozens of isolated exam answers and find a common thread? Well, you look for the human element. Instead of just some dry recitation of plot points or character names, this explainer is going to connect these classic themes directly to your life right now. We are synthesizing essays, short stories, and foundational novels into one cohesive exploration of society, power, and the inner mind. Seriously, these aren't just dusty old books. They're basically instruction manuals for navigating human behavior.
Moving right along to Section 2, Prose, Philosophy, and Society. Let's start with the essays.
Our prose section kicks off with a really foundational debate on character, social interaction, and honestly, what it means to carry yourself well in the world. I want you to think about this for a second. In our modern, super fast-paced world, what makes a true gentleman? Is it wealth? Is it the clothes you wear? Well, John Henry Newman posed this exact question in his classic essay, and you know what? His answer is profoundly different from what you might expect.
Newman argues that a gentleman is, quite simply, someone who never inflicts pain. That's it. His true purpose is to basically remove all that friction and awkwardness from social interactions. It's kind of like how a really comfortable chair reduces physical jarring. A gentleman reduces mental discord. He doesn't show off, he avoids sharp retorts, and he even exercises this incredible empathetic tolerance toward his enemies. It's honestly a complete masterclass in emotional intelligence.
And this brilliantly illustrates the nuance these classic writers brought to everyday observations. Take Francis Bacon's essay of Youth and Age. Bacon compared the high energy and original ideas of youth, which, let's be real, often lack foresight, with the sound judgment of age, which can sometimes be a bit too slow and cautious. His brilliant conclusion? Ultimate practical success requires a synthesis of both. You absolutely need that youthful execution, but it has to be guided by aged wisdom.
Liam Hazlitt actually took a really similar comparative approach, pitting everyday common sense against formal scholarship. He humorously pointed out how these brilliant academic geniuses, totally weighed down by abstract theories and pedantic rules, often stumble incredibly awkwardly in just simple, daily life situations. The idea here is that common sense, forged through real-world experience, is the true currency of social harmony.
Now, moving from personal character to bigger societal structures, Dr. S. Radhakrishnan offers a pretty stark critique of what he calls the lottery of the ballot box. His text warns that pure political mechanics, just counting heads, can really easily degenerate into mob rule. It makes a system highly susceptible to money and propaganda. He argues that without moral discipline and a genuine pursuit of intellectual excellence, democracy essentially fails its ultimate purpose, which is protecting human dignity.
That brings us to Section 3, Stories of Irony and Tragedy. Building on those societal critiques, let's shift gears over to short stories.
These narratives act as sharp and often tragic studies in social interaction and deeply ingrained human flaws. Notice how these three stories map out the inevitable consequences of human weakness. In Catherine Mansfield's A Cup of Tea, the wealthy Rosemary's superficial charity literally crumbles into raw jealousy the second her husband calls a poor girl pretty. Then, in Tagore's Tragic Living or Dead, the intense social superstition surrounding widows forces the alienated Katabini to commit suicide just to prove to her terrified family that she wasn't a ghost. And over in Saki's The Open Window, the highly neurotic Mr. Nuttall is driven into a frantic panic by a teenager's ghost story.
Speaking of that teenager in The Open Window, her name was Vera, and the story ends with this absolutely perfect line. Romance, at short notice, was her specialty. Now, in this context, romance means mischievous, spontaneous fiction. Vera masterfully read her neurotic guest's vulnerabilities, and she psychologically terrorized him with a brilliantly crafted, completely fake ghost story, complete with realistic details and just perfect comedic timing.
On a much more somber note, we look at Hemingway's Old Man at the Bridge. Set during the Spanish Civil War, this story highlights the heartbreaking reality of war's innocent bystanders. The exhausted 76-year-old man has absolutely no political affiliation. He's ignoring the advancing artillery because his only concern, his only grief in the world, is over the goats and pigeons he was forced to leave behind. It is just a quiet, devastating portrait of collateral damage.
All right, Section 4, Novels Exploring Tyranny and Youth. From the personal tragedies of short stories, we're going to expand our lens a bit.
Now we're looking at the macro-level consequences of ideology and the messy process of growing up, explored through 2 foundational novels. Let's zoom out and see how this builds into George Orwell's Animal Farm. The timeline here maps a deeply tragic progression. It starts with a spontaneous utopian rebellion sparked by actual hunger and mistreatment. But right after defending their freedom at the Battle of the Cowshed, the internal corruption begins. The visionary Snowball is exiled, the foundational commandments are secretly altered, and the whole thing culminates in the heart-wrenching betrayal of Boxer. Boxer was the loyal, working-class horse, and he is sold to a slaughterhouse by the very regime that he helped build.
So, how did it happen? Let's break down the dictator Napoleon's playbook, because he didn't just seize power overnight. First, he abolished Sunday democratic debates, replacing them with a secret committee. Then, he used propaganda to rewrite history, blaming absolutely all failures on his exiled rival, Snowball. He cultivated this massive personality cult with mandatory parades. And finally, he enforced his rule through sheer terror and public executions, completely manipulating the fearful, confused animals.
The crucial point here is captured in this chilling paradox. What began as the noble ideal that all animals are equal was twisted by the pigs into all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. It brilliantly, and frankly terrifyingly, illustrates the ultimate corruption of revolutionary ideals, showing how language itself is manipulated to justify tyranny. Shifting from political tyranny over to the turbulence of youth, we look at R.K. Narayan's The Bachelor of Arts. This novel traces Chandran's coming-of-age arc. After a heartbreaking, unrequited romance that was actually thwarted by mismatched astrological horoscopes, Chandran suffers a breakdown. He wanders South India as a fake holy man, a renounced ascetic. But eventually, guilt over his own hypocrisy drives him right back to reality, where he settles down as a newspaper agent and finds mature, practical adult responsibility.
Which brings us to Section 5, the final takeaway. We've covered gentlemen, ghosts, dictators, and heartbroken ascetics. So how do we bring all these dense literary lessons together into a final takeaway for our modern lives? Amazingly, this same source text offers incredibly practical modern advice right alongside its philosophical warnings. For instance, it literally outlines proper phone etiquette. It stresses immediate identification, active listening, and courteous phrasing to overcome the lack of nonverbal cues. On the totally other end of the spectrum, the text details a stark socio-economic paradox in developing nations, how structural inequalities create a system of protective socialism for the rich, while leaving the working poor totally exposed to the raw, uncontrolled risks of capitalism. The breadth of this material is just truly astounding.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder. From the interpersonal vanity of a wealthy woman offering a cup of tea to the systemic manipulation of language by a tyrant pig, these authors essentially laid out the blueprint of human behavior. Look around at our modern world today. Are we still falling victim to the exact same vanity, tyranny, and societal fears these authors warned us about decades ago? Keep that in mind the next time you scroll through the news or, even just answer the phone. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I really hope this sparks you to view the world just a little bit differently.